What's the weirdest dream you've ever had? About 15 years ago, I had a dream/nightmare that occurred over 3 nights, like a fucking horror miniseries, picking up nearly exactly where it left off the night before. It was vivid and terrifying in a way that was unlike any other dream I've ever had, and although it happened over 15 years ago, certain images are still just burned in my brain. Convoluted story short. My mother and grandmother metamorphosized into vampires with a bit of harpy flavor and, unbeknownst to me, begin hunting me. At the outset of the dream I'm on foot, going in and out of shops, but as my vampire mother and grandmother close in on me, Jim Carrey arrives in a badass Corvette and swoops me up, getting us out of there just in time. The rest of the dream is basically a horror/action sequence of cat and mouse, with harpy vamps chasing and nearly catching me/us, and my hero, Jim Carrey, helping get us out of close call after close call. It sounds ridiculous, even funny. I cannot describe the abject terror this dream filled me with 4 weeks after I had it. Vivid dream. I was king of all humanity, naturally. In my marble hall I went outside to greet my people, who spread as far as the eye could see. In the far distance there were 2 mountain ranges, and the people huddled even between them to catch a glimpse of me. No doubt the crowds went beyond that. After waving for quite some time I decided to meet my people. So they began to pass on one of those things you see in airports that makes people move faster. It was then I realized I was king of all of mankind throughout history, naturally. Long dead presidents and kings passed to say hello. There I saw Richard Nixon from his 1960 presidential run. He was in black and white. I tried to grab him as I was becoming lucid, and I wanted an explanation. I failed, but he said, "Now let me make this very clear. I'll be back later." 1968 Nixon did indeed come a while later, this time in full color. I grabbed him, and we went to my library which has every book ever written. We wandered a while. He sat me by the fire, and perched his feet on a comfy stool. I sat with him. "What does it all mean, Dick?" I said. Nixon looked into the fire solemnly, and answered me thus. "If you can't be yourself, who are you?" He turned, smiled softly, and I woke up. I was in a major depression in college, and was drinking pretty damn heavily. I came out, and lost a good portion of my friends over something I thought would be so trivial. They had no issues when I was B. I had to move out of our apartment, and into my own for half a semester. One time, I drank for almost a week straight. And when you have drank that much and that long, your body goes into withdrawals. I probably didn't sleep for almost 3 days while coming down. I was going nuts, but I was done feeding the beast. When I finally fell asleep, even for an hour, I had this very cathartic Alice in Wonderland, personal adventure type dream. It was weird as hell, but when I woke up, I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and started to move on. Best weirdest dream ever. Here's a fun one. I had a nightmare that John Goodman's wife approached outside a roadhouse in tears. She said her husband was inside with someone else, and wanted me to tell him to come home. Confused, I went inside, and sure enough there was John Goodman sitting in a corner booth with piles of plates in front of him, and a very wispy looking woman sitting across from him. I went up to him, and stammered that his wife was outside. At which point a 12-foot tall John Goodman stood up and roared at me. He then proceeded to chase me down a hallway and eat me. Like, just picked me up and shoved me down his throat, man. I'm unsure what this meant. Have had a few over the years, but there are 2 that stuck with me. One was working out a workflow for a device. The other was a nightmare about a radio station I worked at. I was tasked with producing a video feed for a school event. It needed 2 cameras and titles. I had just bought an 80s vision switcher, a device that combines multiple video and audio sources for a TV/video production, and was still trying to figure it out. Had no luck after a night of experimenting with it, and went to bed. Fell asleep and I dreamt I was at the school event and everything was working. Camera 1 was an input 1 and camera 2 was an input 2. Then I saw my configuration, and realized that the switcher had a key only input, and realized that I could just use a computer to feed graphics in that way, even if they were monochrome. Woke up, tested this theory, and it worked perfectly. The school event ran smoothly because of that dream. 2. I was new to working in radio, and I had done a few shifts of paneling. pushing all the buttons for a show. In this dream, I was taking a network feed and went to play the commercial break and the machine that plays the breaks shut off completely. The station then goes to dead air and I start panicking. Went to the backup machine with the emergency music, then that died too. Then the panel itself died and the whole studio lost power. I woke up in a panic. Had a chat to the station's technician, who told me that it's not an uncommon nightmare and they run me through how to change studios in such a situation. Opening my eyes slowly on my knees, hands clasped together, and noticing huge gold stone floor, slowly looking to me left and seeing different groups and singular people quietly praying, kneeling and on their stomach, or just quietly talking to each other. Then slowly lifting my head and seeing a huge foot leading to a light blue long tunic. Then noticing arms resting on a throne where armrests and backrest were same height. Seeing a human face surrounded by brilliance, instantly knew that mercy was given to me to show the face I was used to seeing as a kid. He was content in watching everyone, and when I noticed him slowly turning his face down to me, I put my head down in childlike respect. Then my head raised slowly, and I saw huge ridges on fingerprints on fingertips slowly guiding me to have eye contact. He had a quiet smile. I smiled back quietly, then put my head down again. Then I woke up in my dark room with whoa, what just happened? Literally happened yesterday night, and all down to a super fun thing called sleep paralysis. For me, that means being both awake and asleep at the same time. I was awake and could see my room, but asleep and could also see the Grim Reaper in my room. When in sleep paralysis mode I make some weird noises, but can't move, and this woke my partner. Usually I can convince myself that it's a dream and not real, but as my partner started to panic because of my weird noises, I assumed it was real, and he could also see the Grim Reaper too, who by this point had a hand reaching for my throat. As my rational functions shifted to hysteria, the paralysis broke, and I let out a very loud scream, finally waking myself up properly, and the shadowy vision of death disappeared. Sleep paralysis is the worst. I don't remember most of it, but I slept at some friend's place that night. So, I dreamt that I was sleeping on their couch, which I actually was. But in that dream there was a plant over me on which a spider was sitting. It was one of those small spiders that jump ridiculously far, but probably 20 times bigger than Iroll, so roughly the size of a thumb. Me, being terrified of spiders, did the logical thing. I turned around on the couch so that my head was where my feet were, which apparently was enough for dream me to feel safe again. Then I remember thinking about killing the spider, but I thought that would probably wake my friends up, so I decided to not disturb the spider. I think one of my friends was really mad at me later because I considered attacking her pet spider. Her being good was so terrifying that I woke up. Then I told her boyfriend about my dream and he laughed when I said that her being mad was the real nightmare. Except I didn't wake up, I just dreamt it. When I woke up 4 I told the BF about this dream, and I had a really weird deja vu. I dreamed of this yesterday actually, lol. I don't think this is the weirdest one, but still weird, and one of the few I remember. Long story short, there was this convention on TV about how hard it is for people to dress up and pretend they were inflatable fruit. So this random dude created inflatable fruit with anthropomorphic, picture a strawberry with arms and legs, eyes, and mouth, characteristics that had a mind of their own. Time skip. My friends and I were on a farm and these fruits appear out of nowhere and start chasing us. We were being chased by a bunch of inflatable fruits that were pissed because one of my friends tried to catch one of them with a pokeball. We were running for our lives, and then some Avengers or MCU characters showed up, and instead of beating up the fruit they carried us, and they started running away from the fruit with us in their arms. But it didn't matter that they were superheroes. The inflatable fruits were still up to par with their running velocity, and then I woke up. The weirdest one I can actually remember. I dreamt I was flying with my brothers to the US and the plane crashed. I woke up on some plane wreckage in the ocean, looked around on the empty horizon, and started to hear splash sounds. I turned around, and for some reason there was something akin to the front of a cathedral where pallets were constantly thrown from. Then I noticed that there was right besides it a big gothic house. Yes, also in the water. Both of the buildings weren't there at first. We swam up on it on our wreckage and knocked the door. Some priest looking guy came up on the balcony above the door and said, if I remember correctly, we had some short talk, and he said something like, of course I help you. He then went inside, and we waited at the door below the balcony. Suddenly he opened the door on an entirely different part of the building, which confused me. We swam to it, and shortly before we reached it, he just closed it, and that was it. Then we swam around the building and basically climbed up some sort of stairway at the side, and ended up what I would describe as small Dark Souls-esque park. I have a hard time describing it. It was basically some backyard hills, where the grass went into level border mountains like in a video game. The building behind had an alcove with a bench with an old dude sitting on it, and a chasm in front of it. There was also a weirdly smooth grey tower to the right with a very thin plank that leads somewhere. Around that time I woke up, in a hospital bed, because my plane crashed and I survived, which then made me wake up for real. I felt weird after waking up,